What's cracking, everybody? You're back with Mr. Berger, and I'm really excited to do tonight's video because it's my second official collaboration. Tonight, I'm collaborating with Hulk Gaming. Hulk smash! You can follow him on Twitter at Nova_I_Hulk. He's a 15-year-old Indian player who claims to have been asked to play for Nova. I'll let you decide for yourself. We'll be covering his version of Golem Double Prince. The main difference in this deck is that it runs Inferno Dragon. He claims to have gone 18-0 with this deck. I'll let you decide for yourself. Without further ado, let's get to tonight's video. So the first thing to note about this deck is that it is definitely a big Beatdown snowball push deck, and if you haven't already, make sure that you take a look at one of my previous Golem Double Prince deck videos. I've done a couple of them already. I'll link them up in the card above there, so go and take a look at that. Now, this deck, I've covered one similar to it, but this one is a little bit different. So the main difference, as you can see, is that there's an Inferno Dragon in there, and I'll talk a little bit about why that is later. So one tip that I want to make sure to put out there before I forget is to remember to take advantage of that Elixir pump. Because this is such a big, heavy, beat-down deck, you want to make sure that you get a chance to pump up, gain that Elixir advantage, and try to get a massive push going. Of course, as you can see in the replay here, sometimes that's not even necessary. Alright, now, let's go ahead and get on to the tips from Hulk, the guy himself who sent me this deck and these replays that you're going to be watching here in the background. So some things that he said about his deck here. You don't want to open up with your Golem. Well, why is that? Well, that's just kind of like a general rule, and I've talked about this in other videos before for a lot of heavy decks, because you're investing 8 Elixir. It's one of the most costly cards in the game as far as Elixir goes, other than, of course, like the 3 Musketeers, which costs 9. So if you place that Golem down all the way in the back, then they're going to have a chance to counter push in the opposite lane really quickly, or they're going to have a chance to react to your Golem very well and preemptively put down a bunch of defense that counters him, like an Inferno Tower or an Inferno Dragon or something like that. So Hulk's recommendation is that you place it down when your opponent is down on Elixir. So when you have an Elixir advantage through getting Elixir gain from your pump or positive Elixir trades, then yeah, that's when you want to place it down. So on top of that, I would add that you also want to get a feel for the deck, but that goes without saying, because you're going to get the Elixir advantage through playing the match and successfully getting positive Elixir trades. That'll allow you to get a feel for their deck, see what they're running, and counter and push accordingly. So, place it when they're down on Elixir, or wait till double Elixir time. In double Elixir time, you'll have a lot greater chance to react and kind of counter the opposite lane if they send something in the opposite lane of your Golem. So you can definitely place him down a little bit more aggressively once you're in double Elixir time or sudden death. Now let's talk a little bit about that Inferno Dragon. And before we do that, look at this replay. That Golem tanks, those princes connect, and that's GG. So the Inferno Dragon plays a very vital role in this deck. You'll notice that the previous versions of this deck ran on something generally like Baby Dragon. You know, like an air support, relatively tanky unit. I would run maybe Executioner even in that. And the major thing of that being that it synergizes really well with the Tornado, which is still in this deck. The reason that he put Inferno Dragon in there, and this is really smart, I thought about it for a little while, is because P.E.K.K.A. is a hard counter to the Golem. And since the Golem is the big heavy tank in this deck, P.E.K.K.A. not completely shuts it down, but does a wonderful job of destroying it. Then your Inferno Dragon does a great job of shutting down P.E.K.K.A. So that's why he decided to put this Inferno Dragon in the deck. Now let's talk about that Tornado a little bit. Well, the main reasons that you have the Tornado in this deck is, well, one, to activate the King Tower. And this is something that, again, I've stressed in many of my videos before. You always want to use it to activate the King Tower with, like, a Hog, even something like untraditional, like a Valkyrie or a Knight. You can use it even on, like, a Golem or a Giant or some sort of heavy tank like that. Pull that into your King Tower once it gets in range of your Princess Tower, and you can pull it all the way in, and it'll activate your King Tower. It allows you to have a big advantage throughout the rest of the game. If you do that successfully, then you can completely shut down their Hog the rest of the game by pulling it to the center of your side of the arena from then on. All 3 of your towers will be shooting it. It'll completely die. Now on top of that, the tornado can be used to take advantage of the golem's death damage. So don't forget the golem does have death damage. Every time that the golem dies, he explodes. He knocks everything back, and he also does damage to it. On top of that, he splits into 2 little golemites. Those 2 little golemites also explode, and they also have their own, not as powerful, but still present death damage. So if you combo that tornado and pull them all in together, then you could take advantage of that death damage and go for a devastating, explosive burst there. Now, if you haven't already, you can take a look at my most recent giant skeleton bait video. And shout out to Rizwan. He was actually the one who crafted that deck, and I didn't fully credit him. He wasn't angry. He was just really happy that I showcased his deck, honestly. Real nice guy. He reached out to me on my YouTube channel, and I followed him on Twitter, and he followed me back and all that good stuff. And he went on Clash with Ash and showcased that deck. What I'm trying to say here, though, mainly, is that that tornado synergizes really well with the death damage, or rather the bomb damage that the giant skeleton does when he drops his bomb on death. And in the same way, your tornado can synergize really well with your golem's death damage in this deck. Alright, the next thing that we want to look at, well, hey, why not talk about Zap? Zap synergizes too, right? He left that out, but hey, tip, this is a collaboration video, so a tip from me, it synergizes really well with Zap. Zap plus Tornado will completely shut down a minion horde, so on and so forth. Does a great job with swarm cards. Now, look what else we got in there. We got that Dark Prince. That Dark Prince has AoE damage as well. So if you tornado everything in together, that Dark Prince charges in, he smacks it all with his giant mace, and blam, it all dies. Alright, so take advantage of all that synergy with your tornado in this deck, mainly to activate King Towers. Now, let's talk really quickly about card replacements. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I know I ramble on about card replacements for too long, but basically, what you want to do if you don't have Inferno Dragon is I would run Inferno Tower, or you could run the classic Baby Dragon and just go for more spell, or not spell synergy, but rather like AoE cleave synergy. Look how he pulls the princess in there, pulls all the units into the princess tower, so whatever the enemy puts down will be pulled in and take damage from the golem's death damage and all the support units. Alright, so if you don't have Inferno Dragon, maybe Inferno Tower or Baby Dragon. If you don't have Golem, you could totally run Giant. You could run this as a Giant Double Prince deck, or even a P.E.K.K.A. Double Prince deck. Very viable in the current meta. If you don't have Pump, you actually want to run Rocket, 6 Elixir cost, and you can completely shut down pumps and do chip damage on the tower, and it's very beneficial. You could also run Freeze, and if you haven't already, take a look at my Golem Double Prince Freeze video that I did recently as well. It's a really fun, interesting, relatively off-meta deck. And I think that it would work out really well in this deck too. Now Zap, I guess Log, but I was actually thinking twice. I thought maybe like Zappies or Ewiz, something to have that kind of, you know, stun effect that you want, because that synergizes really well with your Golem again, because it's such a heavy tank. And obviously the counters of the heavy tanks are going to be the Inferno Dragon, Inferno Tower, and even Sparky, all of which can be interrupted by any sort of a stun effect. For Tornado, I guess, you know, maybe a defensive structure. I think Tesla would be pretty fun. Tesla's pretty awesome in the current meta. It one-shots minions, right? It only takes one shot to completely destroy a minion. So it does a great job of shutting down minion hordes. It's pretty strong in the current meta. So maybe a Tesla. If you aren't already running Inferno Dragon, you could also run Inferno Tower. You know, maybe even a cannon, some sort of a defensive structure to play a similar role. But ideally you want that Tornado because it synergizes so well with the death damage of the Golem and the other AoE damage that you have in your deck. If you don't have Mega Minion, I would just run another tank or support killer like a Mini P.E.K.K.A. or even a Lumberjack. Lumberjack would be awesome in this deck, as Lumberjack is very powerful in a lot of Golem decks. I think that you just kind of want that air targeting unit because you're running the Double Prince. You don't have too much that hits air. So maybe even like minions. But if you don't mind having a whole horde of ground units, go ahead and run Lumberjack or Mini P.E.K.K.A. Something like that really destroys tanks and support. Some really heavy hitter unit. Alright, so let's just take a look at the replay here and see what he does here in this replay. So at this point, he's making sure to pump up, right? And that's a very wise decision. I always recommend to pump up if you can. The opponent isn't answering it. The opponent opts to P.E.K.K.A. in the opposite lane, which is an interesting decision. I guess he's going for a snowball push. Now, I wonder what he's doing here. Well, let's see how he decides to shut down the P.E.K.K.A. He actually goes same lane against the P.E.K.K.A. interesting choice. So what he does is he Inferno Dragons the P.E.K.K.A. Of course, that completely shuts it down. The minion horde comes in, but he does it too late. Look at the synergy of the death damage and the tornado. It completely destroys that minion horde. And of course, the Inferno Dragon does its job and completely destroys good old P.E.K.K.A. Poor girl. Anyway, you got the Dark Prince charging into the princess here, and he actually places the skeleton army around. Now it's interesting, when the Dark Prince is charging and he connects, his AoE damage is actually all around him. It's a big circle around him, not a cone in front of him. So it's similar to a Valkyrie swing. So that's really interesting, something that I learned, I think on like Reddit, or somebody commented on one of my videos or something like that. But anyway, keep that in mind. Alright guys, so it's an AoE damage where he spins all the way around him when he connects for the Dark Prince. Now, he's got the Hog coming in here. The King Tower is already activated, so he could use his Tornado to pull the Hog into the center, but I think he's actually opting to invest all of his Elixir into a big, massive push. And as you can see, this is a very big, pushy, beatdowny, snowball-y kind of deck, right? So he's putting a lot of pressure in the right lane here, and he's going to try to take out that tower. And even though the enemy has the P.E.K.K.A. down, the princes just do so much damage, dude. It's crazy. Princes do so much damage. Anyway, look what he does here. He places another golem right in front of his bridge. Now, why does he decide to do that? Well, that's because he wants to make sure... Well, look at this tornado, first of all. Amazing tornado. I love it. He wants to make sure that he defends his tower. He doesn't want to place the golem behind the tower, because then the enemy will get a chance to charge in and destroy his tower. His tower won't be defended because he's invested that 8 elixir into the golem. So he places it in front there. And he's just chipping away at the enemy's tower. And at this point, he pulls everything in with the tornado. He connects with the prince. And that's GG, guys. Blam. GG.
Hulk smash!
Alright, cool. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe. You can hit that little Berger icon down there, that little watermark. It's one of those little cool drawings that one of my third graders made for me, and I turned it into my icon for my channel. And if you haven't already, you can rage at me on Reddit. You can tweet me on Twitter. What do we have over here? You can inspect me on Instagram, or you can find me on Facebook. Make sure that you follow Hulk on Twitter as well. I'll link his information in the description below. You can also subscribe to his channel. As far as shoutouts go, he wanted to make sure that I gave a shout out to all the Nova players and all the Black Stalkers players. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and have a good night.
Hulk smash!